Greeting. So, just to update on the Kwatamani so-called royal family scam artist. So today, uh, the scam artists were at the market, and as I saw the right hand, or one of the right hands, but the main assistant to Joseph Robinson, aka who called himself the High Priest Kwatamani. As I saw his assistant walking at the market, they don't necessarily make direct attention because, of course, they don't want to draw attention to themselves here in Belize, particularly in the market. Belize is a very small place. But I really have to say, to the woman who used to be called, who is referred to in there as the Oshami, or the feminine speaking voice, or the one that women have to speak to go through Joseph Robinson. I just really got to say, without being too long-winded, the audacity to walk by and just to hold your nose up in the air as we're walking past the market, because everybody doesn't know necessarily the African Americans their business, nor that they necessarily need to. But people hold up and keep up face, for reputation purposes in the market. But anyway, to cut to the chase, the audacity to hold your nose up as a person I put on a pedestal not long after I first encountered uh, you all, and as I encountered Joseph Robinson and his royal family, and I went for a visit there, they were going to have a union or a marriage, or what they call a divine union of one of their daughters. And I came down, and she is usually there by his side because she's the interpreter for him, because he technically does not have his physical eyesight. He's blind. And she wasn't there, which is the first time I had not noticed her there. And another woman was in her place, another of his mates. And I thought it was very odd. With them, a lot of times notice a lot of, well, if you're not familiar, you won't notice, but having been around them, you can notice a difference in patterns, even if you don't know the details. So anyway, she wasn't around. And they made a big production also. Her mother came. Come to find out, she had been arrested for an accident. Now, we weren't there. We were just told that there was an accident, and they read a statement, and she had been put in jail. So if it was an accident or whatever, if the man who was in the police, whatever, he almost died or whatever. So it turned out, however. But what I did is I immediately went in order to help, because they said they would need some help with, whatever fees and whatever contributions. I don't know if whatever union didn't take place during that time because this was an emergency, so the Divine Union, they delayed it. But anyway, I went and immediately and took my rent money to donate it so you would not be in jail in a foreign country, right? So for you to turn your nose up is quite disgusting. And I have to say it's unfortunate. I really lost every bit of respect that I had for you. And I really put you up there, which I don't put many people, but I really lost respect for the women there. And although I understand that they've been there and they're vested and they have children, although your child is not in there. The other women were very vested in there, and as a mother, I can get it. If your children are in there and you've already given away all of your assets, and you've really destroyed or severed your relationships, I'll say severed your relationships with your family members, for so many years, and you're brainwashed, where do you go after that? I've heard different things come out of his mouth. But in a nutshell, to turn up your nose if I'm walking, that's how, I step up and I represent. Not that I'm not a flawed human being, but that's not the case here. I took my rent money to make sure that to contribute to you not being in jail, and you turn your face up. So whether you're brainwashed or not, your brain is not totally gone. It's disgusting. And I really lost respect for you and the so-called queen mother in that place. And to be quite honest, is really the lessons that I received here in Belize and Central America have given me a whole nother perspective on who we call elders. And I was raised, elders deserve respect, but we are also definitely in a time where we have to acknowledge there's a lot of wrong done by elders, and there's no corrective action, and there's no accountability. And that's something that needs to be corrected, because, and that's on us. It's in the world, but I'm speaking in the and the Black community. I'm not going to claim the so-called conscious community because that's become a whole nother level of religion. But just in terms of accountability, there should be accountability when it comes to elders and when it comes to scamming. Or just, you're not even that much older than me. You're old. I gave you the respect based on experience or who you presented yourself at. But on a basic level, I don't know how much I can just blame it on brainwashing. That's number one. Also, when I first encountered you on one of my first visits before I came down there, you all were missing a tractor piece, and you expressed as you were growing food how important the tractor piece is there. I was all for it to support community or whatever it is that you needed. Mind you, I'm not a trust fund person. I work for every coin and every penny I got. But, why not support a community that I'm going to visit and that I'm interested in? So by whatever meaning, however, I noticed that you all do your mailing and things get lost in the mail. You couldn't find it. I'm in a cab going all around Brooklyn at different hours to find your tractor piece, right? Paying cabs, lugging it home, getting somebody to take it out in the car, then to make sure that it gets to the destination and is shipped off to you. And I remember, again, you, Gail, saying, you're moving with the Kwatamani vibration now. And I thought that was weird. And I found that's a pattern quite often when I was saying, why would somebody be saying something like that? I wasn't moving with the Kwatamani vibration. I'm just moving as a responsible adult that's just helping out. So everything that is good or righteous, you claim as your Kwatamani vibration. No, I'm moving because that's the type of human being I was. And it was not, in the end, appreciated. Now, again, it makes me think of the way you turn your face and there's no acknowledgement. But I do understand at this point in studying narcissists and cult leaders that they don't have a conscience, and how they have their, it's a term called flying monkeys, or their minions, or their close confidants, and the people that do their dirty work. Basically that's how it goes. The other thing, again, Gail Wells, numerous times when we were asking about our immigration and when we went to pay for our immigration, you as a grown adult woman well into your 50s who has had a child before, in terms of responsibility, as someone that's been a professional, has been a homeowner in the past, you don't pay for anything without a receipt, particularly when you're in another country. And when my sister and I went to ask to pay for immigration with our credit card, and it had a Visa and a credit card logo there, whatever the price is, so that we can have receipts, so we can have legal documents of what we were doing there, you would just constantly say, well, I'll relay it to the high priest. And you kept trying to egg us for the money. The money wasn't a concern. It was the lack of transparency. That's one of the biggest problems. And I would caution anybody going towards the so-called Kwatamani royal family cult, because they don't have any transparency. Maybe because of this now, and this outing now, maybe they'll change some of their procedures to those people that are looking to come down into the cult. And I guess it took a while for me to even admit that it was a cult per se, because I wouldn't like to think that I got fooled into a cult. But the longer I have been out of it and I look at the movements and the particular tactics and the absolute wielding of control, it is most definitely a cult. And yes, we could say that there are all different types of cults, from religions to businesses, but a lot of times those are deflections and generalizations that are made to take the focus off of what is being done in the present. So I'm speaking in particular right now about the Kwatamani cult headed by Joseph Robinson, who likes to call himself the Earth Solar Messiah, the spiritual healer, the soothsayer. I had a context of what that meant, and I didn't really take it as anything big because there's nobody walking around as a Jesus. But to later on figure that this person and his followers really believe that he is the second coming or whatever. And to be quite honest, I don't know if so much people really believe that, or people have to make themselves believe it because they are just in too deep for too many years and have gotten themselves in certain situations. This man has exploited their insecurities, their finances, they've severed their relationships or compromised greatly their relationships with their family members. So now they're in just basically very deep. Again, it's really shameful. Again, I have to say I really lost all respect, and I held you all in the highest respect. Joseph Robinson, aka High Priest Kwatamani, first of all, who I will never call a high priest. He is not. If he's a high priest of anything, it's a high priest of scamming. But I will not give him that acknowledgement. And the so-called sisterhood, a bunch of grown adult women that know what other women are getting into, I lost all respect. And I really feel sad, for the youngest woman that is in there, the youngest light skinned, the latest mate. And it's because of the lack of transparency and the total manipulation of people that are coming forward that are seeking some kind of assistance. So another example, again, of this woman, Gail Wells, we would have to really petition and ask in advance in order to get any kind of signal. And this only got strained more and more the longer we are there. When I'm referring to a signal, if we wanted to go out to get internet, mind you, some years ago, I gave several $1,000s for this community to be able to have internet, which never materialized, by the way. And on one of my visits, they took me for a ride around, and I'm wondering why they're taking me for a ride around in the car when they were just showing me all the trees had been planted, coconut trees and other things. Now that I've been here in Belize, coconut trees don't really cost anything much to plant, particularly if you have 99 acres of land and you have coconuts all over. You could just take the coconut sproutlings and plant them. So again, if you don't have a frame of reference, it's easy for you to be scammed. But back to the story, we wanted to go out and to get a signal so that we can take care of business in the States, right? Because we're here in Central America, and sometimes they will call us last minute if we were able to go out and get a signal, because again, it became tighter and tighter, the reins on us being able to go out and communicate with the outside world. And sometimes we wouldn't get a chance to wash. In addition, we didn't use any chemicals, which is not necessarily a problem with washing. We bathed in the creek, or we had water pumped from the creek into old barrels. But quite often, we use lime to cleanse our skin. And sometimes the system be able to get a signal, and we weren't even given lime to wash. Now, I know in the States, I would use baking soda sometimes, because as someone that works in fitness, I can't walk around funky, and I don't like internet place. We had to find a place with some decent internet to do any kind of uploading or downloading. We went into the establishment, and a man said to us, well, basically he said that some other people were complaining and asked us not to come back about our smell. And that this is my sister and I, because they would drop us off for a signal, again, sometimes without any food, to sit there all day while they were doing construction on the so-called pyramid that we also contributed to. But anyway, he said, well, maybe you should come back on the day when it's cooler outside. Now, it's hot in Belize. This is a tropical environment. Basically, the man was saying that we stink. And to be quite honest, we did have a smell. Okay, so when we get back finally, I was like, it was ridiculous. So I went and said, you know what, we went and we got a signal today. And the gentleman said that we stink, that we have a smell. And you had a smirk on your face, almost like it was funny. That was not funny. You went back, oh, you relay it to the high priest. Everything was relaying it to the high priest. This is the disgusting behavior that people out there will never be privy to. So they had the so-called Queen Mother, aka Muna Robinson, his longest standing wife or mate, from Africa, that's what them say, you don't stink. You don't stink. And I'm thinking like, yeah, we do smell. And if we could at least get some baking soda when we go out. So as grown women, we have to go out if we're signal, and we have to go out smelling if we have our cycle. And we also couldn't even get pieces of lime to wash our bodies. I mean, it was just so much in terms of like, we couldn't even get a piece of lime. Okay, it's one thing if the lime is not available in the market, but we're watching all the sisterhood, of the royal family get lime to wash themselves. And we couldn't even get a piece of lime to wash ourselves. And then I asked about baking soda, and it had to be a big discussion around, well, we don't use, what do you call that stuff? Bicarbonate, whatever other name they use for it. It's baking soda. Then later, before we finally leave, we're on our way out, we find out, that they do know what baking soda, is, because Muna Robinson speaks perfect English. But the bottom line is, you wouldn't even give us lime to wash. Just like sometimes we would watch the newer young men that were married into your family here from Belize. That's a whole other story. And we're on the bus and we're watching your daughters, their new mates, constantly feed them food. And as people, my sister giving $10,000 US dollars every 3 months for a non-existent healing program that quite often they're slurping up on all kind of food that their mates are eating, and we can't eat. I mean, really, that's the difference in the treatment. It's really disgusting. So I really have to say, hopefully people will be cautious before they go into these cults, because there's so much that you cannot see online. You're not going to see it online. People are not going to let you see it online. It's going to be very cryptic. And one of the techniques that's used is a velvet rope. You so badly want an alternative life from city life. You so badly want a difference or a change or family or community that you're willing to overlook things. Now, mind you, I wasn't willing to overlook but so much, but I'm not one to accuse somebody of something falsely. No matter what I think, I need, evidence. And quite frankly, there's so much that we would not have been able to see had we not gone there and lived inside of there for so long. And quite honestly, it's really disappointing to see the amount of shaming that goes on of women that come out to speak out, whether it's in our community, because it's trending right now, whether it's molestation or scamming, that, people would try to second guess you. Well, is it just you that has the complaint and not the other sisters? What we experience inside of this cult is not up for debate. I am a mother. I can admit, I encourage my sister and my son to come down to beliefs so we can check it out for another way of life. And I was also very clear that should we see things that didn't add up, or if it didn't work for us, we came prepared to purchase land. And we brought that up several times. And it was just so much manipulation. We wanted to leave numerous times before, and we were constantly told by the so-called Joseph Robinson, so self-proclaimed high priest, self-proclaimed earth, soul, and Messiah, we've invested so much energy in you. Just constant manipulation and fear tactics to keep us, in there. And the longer you're in there and you're cut off from the outside world, it really runs a mind game on you. And I'm not stupid, but for many people that may not be able to understand, when somebody's playing with your food source, I'm trained as a chef and was a living foodist before I came in there. But we weren't allowed to prepare any of our own food. Anything we brought in had to be shared, not a problem with sharing. But then we would bring things of food in there. I would send barrels of food and pay for the cost of the barrels of the food, way before we even got there. And let's say, for example, I was bringing some bags of pistachios, things that I know that they would really enjoy. They don't have access to in Belize. So I'll go to Trader Joe's, buy bags of pistachios, and I love pistachios. I'm like, I'm not going to eat them. I'm going to bring them to share with the family. Okay. So we bring them there. We're in the car one day and we see the empty wrapper on the floor. And I was thinking like, wow, that's interesting, because we were told even if they had one apple, everybody gets a slice off of that apple. And we would see the empty package on the floor. And I didn't say anything for a long time. It's not so much the pistachios, it's the principle and the unfair treatment that we saw of the different people that were in there. We're watching people eat food, and we're coming in bringing tremendous resource, because no one in there works outside of their community. From what I see, if they're able to get any grants or any donations, it's really cash cows like my sister and me and other people, a couple of key people. It doesn't take a lot of people, particularly when you keep your expenses low. It doesn't take a lot of people to feed this kind of scam, because it's running under the radar in another country where you're not held accountable to U.S. law. So many people don't understand the workings of a cult, and many of our people refuse to read. Many people refuse to take the time to educate themselves on cults. There's plenty of information there, but people are either too busy or they won't take the time. And so if you don't take the time to educate yourself and see the patterns, maybe some people don't want to see the patterns, because some people will be exposed to this information and still choose to go in there anyway. But I'm just sharing it because there are just so many different flashbacks I get of what took place inside of the place. Just what I can see from the construction of the temple and the pyramid and just all the stuff. At this point, I'm not really concerned about what other people, what their thoughts are. I'm not here to be anybody's online gossip or entertainment, because I'm not speaking of something that's not firsthand. This is my firsthand experience of being inside of a cult here in Central America. I get how much, I was one of those people too, I get how much We are impressed by when you see a Black man who seems like he's really about family, and they're homeschooling, and they all have locks. These things, these trappings, it sounds great, and they're eating raw foods. But I gotta have to be real. It's like the food has become a religion. And I've experienced firsthand people are eating raw and living foods, but they might as well have been eating steak for the way I watch this man speak to his mates and for the way I watched him speak to people. But this is so-called, there's always this justification of, this is how the Black man has to raise his family. And I mean, at what point are we going to acknowledge the dysfunction that is coming from within our own community and acknowledge it and not make excuses for it and clean it up? Because if we don't, it's been said, we're on life support right now as a community. And without corrective action from every age, we're going to continue to see, more of the same, or there's just going to continue to be more distrust of each other, and we just won't progress as a people. But I'm just here to share my experience so people have a heads up, and do not romanticize. Don't romanticize Africa. Don't romanticize elders. Don't romanticize anyone. I'm not saying not to have the highest respect for those who have come before us. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying just because somebody has done some good works in the community, that doesn't mean that you overlook them if they are a cheater, if they're a scammer, if they are, in the case of, let's say, for example, a good example is James Bevel, somebody was molesting all of his daughters. It can't continue. It can't continue because a lot of the dysfunction, we are rotting from the inside. We're rotting from the inside because there's lack of accountability, and quite frankly, a lot of women and sisters, because we are so thirsty for relationships and father figures and so-called sisterhood, that we're not going through a proper vetting process. You cannot vet somebody from what you see online. You have all these personalities. We want something so bad. It's like a new age, so-called conscious community television evangelism. And you don't know these people's characters. This stuff is blatant. So it's really starting to become apparent that we want a savior more than we want to be accountable, and more than we're willing to be personally responsible. So, there's so much more that I could say, but just understand, I could say, if there's anything that I could share with folks out there, is to be aware of the patterns. Because although you may not know people personally, pay attention to patterns. Give people a long enough time for the vetting process. Because particularly if you don't live with people, people can tell you anything. And someone that is a professional con artist or professional predator can sniff out insecurities and can sniff out patterns, can sniff out if in a compromised situation, if you have disharmony in your relationships, if you're going through challenges in your relationship, if you're going through life challenges, and people will prey on it. People that look just like you. So that could be people that's outside, where they're white, Black, and all colors in between. But I'm speaking right now in terms of the Black community. And we can't just use the deflection of, it's all about we're supporting white supremacy. No, quite frankly, there's a lot of dysfunction going on in our community, and no one deserves a pass from it, whether it's male or female. So, I'm really just bringing this to light because there's so much that happened in that experience that I can never say it in a matter of a few minutes. I'm not here for anybody to take my side. I'm just sharing my experience as a more mature adult. So being that I'm not in my teens or my 20s or even my 30s, I've been around long enough to see certain patterns. And I'm not an armchair rhetoric kind of mother. I didn't send my son someplace to learn about living foods. I was already doing that. I didn't go somewhere for somebody to change my hair and make me go natural, or that I hadn't experienced any kind of community or culture. If anything, the warm tropical environment and the trees and the thought of people working together, that was what was new, which had me in awe, But it took a while for me to see certain patterns, and it just were off. And there's no amount of rhetoric or royal family community, or there's no amount of rhetoric that could justify the things that I saw were off. And we are turning a blind eye out there in so-called, when people want to call it Babylon or in city life. As a community, we will turn a blind eye to people's behavior when they have looks, when they have money, when they have when they're an entertainer, and if they have talent. We will overlook the fact that their character and their morals are lacking. And I'm not talking about religion, but just their basic character. That is something that we have to reckon with, because we're putting somebody's looks and their talent and their money before looking at their character. And the character, if their character is off and is flawed, is going to show its face. And by the time you figure out the patterns of how deep you are, it may be too late. Can non-natives of Belize legally own and purchase the, hey, greetings, own and purchase land? Actually, yes, you can. You can purchase and own land, and yeah, you can legally purchase and own land, even if you're not a resident. So these are things, if you come, that's a good example of something that you may not know if you're not from here, or you haven't lived abroad in another country, that somebody will take full advantage of you if you don't know the immigration laws, if you don't know how to purchase land. It's easy to get scammed, and quite often people will sell land that they don't even own. Or it's not uncommon to have a community that owns, to a certain degree, owns the land. So it may not be one person. So the laws are not necessarily, they're not the same as in the States. And if we come to another country with a stateside mentality, you're going to be in for a shock. If you go to build a house or something, you're going to get charged quadruple the amount, you know. So someone that comes and does, puts the equity and put the time, you know, which may be challenging for a lot of people, but that puts the time into coming, getting on the ground, and doing the footwork and making the connections is very important, so you don't get scammed, because you'll get played. You can be played by your own folks who are looking, who know that you're coming over here, so they know your language and know your nuances, and it's just very, very it's very, very easy to get played. It just is, you know. It's so much. We learn so much, and I consider myself as having done research. But there's so much I learned being on the ground here, you know. So there's so much, like Sister Wanda Denise, you had told me the other day about a brother who had a live stream, and I went on to check out the live stream. And again, I sent you note. Thank you very much for sharing that information. But they were going on and on about it being South America. This is not even South America. So people don't realize that Belize, Honduras, Costa Rica, this is Central America. So I thought it was very interesting that they had this whole long live stream and they had the location wrong. And it makes a big difference. Many people may not be aware of the legal age in many countries. You know, a lot of times it speaks, you know, as Black folks, we won't read and we won't do our own research. Any personality that yeah, they're ill-informed, and that does not make them wrong. It doesn't make them bad, but being misinformed or ignorant is going to cost you dearly. If you're ignorant of somebody's their credit report, of their character, of their police record, Interpol, international records, is what you'll experience when you're going to other countries. It's going to cost you. It's going to cost you. And even if it's not our fault, it is our responsibility to do due diligence and to do your research, and to vet people, even those people who you are counting on to give you information. You know, again, if we're coming from the States and you come over here and somebody's been on the ground for 3, 4, 5 years and they figure things out, they may not necessarily be open to just giving you that information for free, especially if they can't vouch for your character and if you haven't developed any kind of relationship with them. So I really have to say, with all honesty and compassion, we really have to, I mean, I said we don't have to do anything, you know, but it's only going to benefit us to grow up and get a sense of maturity and not be so distracted by people telling us the things that we like and that we want to hear, and not asking the right questions. It's like me going to look at a piece of land. I'm like, wow, it has a fruit cheese. Wow, it has a structure on it. But I don't ask about the land taxes. I don't ask about the neighbors. I don't ask about the flooding. You know what I'm saying? If I'm so eager, which is the stateside in the United States, to have it, is to be so wild and having tea and shooting, you know, shooting off at the lip and comparing stories and asking about relationships, that a lot of times we're not asking the pertinent questions. And we also don't like to be uncomfortable. especially as women. We don't like to be made, we don't want to feel like we're being rude to an elder or rude to someone else. So you'll find yourself eating some stuff that you don't want to eat or not asking pertinent questions. And it is very, very expensive to be ignorant and to not do your due diligence. When you're into a situation and you find yourself isolated, without your devices, without access to a signal, hopefully not pregnant or in another relationship, it's going to be kind of late to it's going to be kind of almost too late to pull yourself, extract yourself from a situation without a lot of severe consequences. And forbid if you have other family members with you. A lot of times you experience a lot of trauma coming out of these situations, sometimes just based on ignorance, and it's not limited to just being overseas. A big distinction with being overseas is you just can't get on a bus and go home. And again, if you've severed ties with a lot of your relationships at home, then people are going to be feeling the way, which with the brother did make a good note of. Some people might not want to be checked for you because they feel like you turned your back or you severed the relationship. Those same people, you might need to make a phone call to get back to the United States or to get a plane ticket or have somebody come check for you, have somebody make a phone call for you or check a police record for you. So there's so much. I'm not here to make anyone feel bad or wrong. Again, I'm not here for anyone's entertainment. I'm definitely not here to bash Black men or bash my community. I am here to share my very real experience. So hopefully people will be encouraged to do their research and give you maybe some kind of a glimpse into all of the different things you won't see through edited videos or orchestrated videos, particularly when it is a personality that you like or when you have your mind so set on getting out of the country and having another kind of international experience. And that was something I also thought was very interesting in the live stream, was that a point of view that was expressed is that many people in the United States, it was said, we need you right here. We need you right here. And I thought it was very emotional. But, just because somebody wants to leave the United States, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're running. You know what I'm saying? It's not for someone to necessarily wait for the whole community to change their behavior and their habits and check their vices before they make a decision to move somewhere else. As a matter of fact, it would be very good for us to have people moving and living all over the place. It's like somebody traveling out from Africa to different countries and coming back and bringing information to the rest of us so that we know that there are possibilities. For example, perhaps for many Black folks in America may not have it economically. There's only but so much land to make an investment for land. I mean, looking at a cooperative in Brooklyn, New York was almost like too expensive. So some people may be able to afford an investment property overseas, but they may not know where to begin or to start. So it's not a negative for people to want to leave the United States and have those kinds of alliances and working relationships with people that are not just based on emotions. We're very emotional as a people, and quite often that's something that's used against us. Quite often that's one of the things that predators will use against us, and we're so easily manipulated due to us being so emotional. We're very easily triggered to go off and to be irrational. As women, we're very easily triggered in terms of protecting ourselves or when we feel a sense of injustice. I get it. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not going to be talking peace and love. And you can let me know if somebody scammed you or was verbally abusive to your family or did something to harm you. I don't think people would be being all that spiritual. As a matter of fact, it would make me question somebody's sanity if they don't have a natural response to somebody doing harm to them or causing something to them. So again, I'm not here to be anybody's martyr. I'm not here for entertainment. This is also just to leave a track record of our experiences and to provide some kind of shed some kind of light on the things that you may not see being in a cult. You might even be in denial that you're in a cult, especially depending on what your age is. And I have to say, for the people that would say the shaming of somebody that's 20, 25, if you just listen, just look at the patterns. If you just look at the patterns, we have to be willing to educate ourselves. If you look at the patterns, just because somebody's in their 20s and they're old enough to have sex and pay bills that doesn't mean that they know what they're doing. Because if we're really honest, a lot of us in our early 20s, we make some decisions. We make a lot of jacked up and misinformed decisions, straight up ignorant decisions that wind up staying with us for the rest of our lives. That's how a lot of unplanned children are bought for. That's how we can squander a lot of resources and go into debt or maybe risk bankruptcy with a lot of new credit cards when we're in our early 20s. That's how many people contract STDs, by making ignorant, ill-informed, and immature decisions without also many people having mature adults around them who they can seek counsel for. So it's really for us to mature and start to be honest and stop turning or to start to really, it's mind-boggling why people don't speak up, especially women. I think why don't we speak up? I mean, maybe you can. It is mind-boggling, but I have to say I've had several experiences this past year with speaking up about molestation with someone in my family, which the person is deceased, and I didn't hate the person, but I was really questioning why so many people allowed their young children around this person. I was like, don't people know his history? And when I brought it up, it was mostly the women, men too, that came after me, and the family, which I thought it was just, didn't curse them out or anything. I just stated the facts. People want to be very careful and vet those people who they have around their young children, because we all know if we just look at the numbers and the stats, now it's becoming more clear that many of our young men have been violated. I think just men are less likely to talk about it or to discuss it, but it sends a ripple effect throughout the whole community, and it keeps a cycle of dysfunction going when we are tampered with sexually. So there's no, and usually people that are tampered with very often, then they won't have any kind of healthy boundaries. So there's many reasons why women won't speak up. And I'm not here to bash them, but we want to shed some light on it because we have to set a standard for protecting the children. Otherwise, we may really need to consider that many of us are not mature enough to be parents. I don't know if many of us are even really mature enough to be having intercourse with each other because we are so irresponsible, not just sexually in terms of health and diseases, but we're not very responsible when it comes to the emotions that come with this other human being. And I don't think we're mature enough to see the patterns that people are coming with all kinds of dysfunction. If they don't have it handled in their own life, we're going to be projecting that onto each other. And so we're just, quite frankly, with a lot of us have a lot of immaturity. There's a general lack of responsibility. And I'm not saying this to down, our folks. I love my folks. I love my people. But, we just can't keep, it's like keep saying that black don't crack. Like, okay, we might look great, but we could crack on the inside, from not taking care of our health and watching anything. So black can crack from the inside. We just cling on to a lot of sayings that usually don't hold any weight. So it's certain things may not be our fault, but it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility. And we can't wait for people to take a position. Is going to mean, and so, something you brought up, the black family have more compassion for the predator than the victim. Yes, and even when that is within our own, a lot of this also, we could talk about white supremacy out there, but a lot of dysfunction is just coming from straight up simple abuse, and lack of responsibility. Bringing children in here that were ill prepared to take care of and keep justifying, well, the child is going to make me more responsible. That shouldn't be on the child to make us feel more responsible, because actually that's not usually the case. That it magically transforms us into this other human being. Because now we have a child. If we look at just the stats, that's just not true. So perhaps, Frances Cress Welsing, who transitioned to elder, she was onto something when she said many black folks perhaps should wait until they're 30 and 35 before they venture into having children, because most of us are interacting sexually, but we don't really are prepared, not just a desire, not prepared financially, emotionally, psychologically, just we're just not prepared quite often for parenting. So if we can't even be acknowledge, what's happening, or if there's a problem, then how can we even address anything? So, and rather than address anything, now we're looking to these leaders like they have the magic formula. And when you give that responsibility, as I said to my sister, if you don't do your own thinking, you're going to pay a price for somebody to do the thinking for you, to come up with the solutions for you. And a lot of times it's going to come with a lot of extreme control. And that was one of the biggest things we saw. That it was mind boggling, the amount of control, from sex to relationships. And you would try to justify it and say, oh, this is what the ancestors did. You know what? I have to say, quite honestly, we glorify, again, we romanticize our culture, and we want to take the best of our culture. But perhaps there's some things from our culture that attracted certain things to us, and maybe certain things that we don't need to replicate. If we're putting ohenis or kings and stuff, when we say we're kings and queens, we got to put that into a context, because king or queen would mean responsibility, not I get to exploit other people and I get to control other people's lives, or that one is leading the other. We're complementary. It's not one is on top, of the other. So again, I just wanted to express, what what came up in the thought process today, and seeing the Kwatamani so-called royal family at the market today. And it's so much that comes up. I just really hope people do their research and start to use their common sense, because it seems like we're really tuning out because we don't want to be. I just boil it down to we don't want to be responsible in our own lives, and to not be responsible is costing us a lot. We don't want to be responsible with our food intake. For example, the Kwatamani so-called Joseph Robinson's family is fruits and vegetables and seeds and nuts. Veganism and all this stuff, and living food is, I consume living foods, but it's become a religion. It's not a religion. It's not a religion. You could be eating all the living foods, and your mentality, your personality could be like eating a steak. It's not a religion. It's a way of life. And we're not here to bash other people for their food choices. If people see results and they see another person, then it's for them to make that decision to do something else. But just to choose somebody for the food they eat, you got to look at people's character. And if you don't live with people, and you haven't lived with them over a long period of time, and if you should live with them, if everything's hidden from you and it's very transparent, it's very cloaked and is very hidden, then you don't know who it is that you're living with. And you have to know who you're living with before you commit your money, your time, your resources, or allow people into your psyche. So hopefully this is helpful information. Healthy foods and dark hearts. Yeah, they're connected. I can't say which one comes first. But I've been saying it for the longest time. We're long overdue for a cleanup campaign. This was my experience. You don't have to be in Central America, because you can transport yourself anywhere and still be experiencing the same thing. Even if you're in a cult with one person, and you're in a cult and allowing yourself to be controlled by one person. Quite often, some people won't leave because they're too scared to start over. Or what's it going to mean, because they've invested so much into this relationship. It's like someone being in an abusive relationship, but they have furniture and they have cars or whatever, or they've had a child with this person. So it's what they're familiar with, but it comes at a tremendous cost. It could cost one their sanity, or the health and well-being of their offspring, of their children. So it's really not about hating this person or this community. But I am disgusted. I'm disgusted and disappointed at the behavior. Again, I'm not going to say it doesn't mean that I'm not a flawed individual, but that's not the point here, because a lot of times we get into this whole deflection conversation, which is something I see in this online stuff. Well, he cast the first sin, the stone, or this is bull crap. This is bull crap. It's a technique of deflection, and it's a lack of accountability. At the end of the day, perhaps, and I've said it before, maybe we should trade off this whole consciousness. I came into consciousness because this is like talking about a concept. There's no consciousness without responsibility. So maybe when I came into responsibility, because responsibility has actions attached to it. And if they're not consistent actions over time, if they're not consistent, healthy actions that are producing certain results over time, then we're not really saying nothing. you know. So it's time for um, a cleanup campaign. So hopefully people will get this information and do their research on cults. It's a lot of information. There's a lot of information on that the Facebook page about cults. You know, maybe take time away from some of these Game of Thrones or these other things. Take your time and do the research, because as I did, my jaw was open, because most of the patterns and the techniques that I learned about narcissism, which is very prevalent within the popular culture, American culture, and definitely in the Black community. We need to study narcissists and psychopaths. And most of us will be shocked at the patterns, because most of what I came to discover was 110% on point. And these cult leaders will use other family members to get to access to new communities, as I see being done here in Belize. They will use young people to get to their parents and get access to their resources. Like any pimp, they'll use women to bring the other women in. That is what it is. So you can like it or not. I'm not here to convince people. I'm just here to share my authentic experience. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask your questions. Share this video with someone who you know may find some value. And please, everyone, use your common sense. Give people a thorough vetting process. It takes a long time to get to know someone, even if you're living with them, to see their habits, what they do when no one is watching, what people will do when resources get scarce. So you can just see who people really are. You cannot see that on the internet. You cannot see that on the internet. You just can't. So with that saying, I'm just going to wish everybody just a good evening. Okay, take care.